The pattern appears again and again across the pages of history. The individuals who altered the course of nations, shifted the direction of generations, and carried responsibilities far beyond ordinary expectations rarely appeared intimidating at first glance. Their presence was often calm, their words were measured, their movements were deliberate. Yet beneath that quiet exterior existed something that unsettled those around them. It was not aggression, it was not arrogance, it was not a desire for attention, it was influence. Throughout the biblical record, there is a recurring phenomenon that emerges with remarkable consistency. Certain individuals carried a weight that others could feel even before understanding it. Their presence exposed hidden motives. Their convictions revealed weakness in those who preferred compromise. Their stability highlighted the instability surrounding them. As a result, they often encountered resistance that seemed disproportionate to their actions. Consider the young shepherd standing among his brothers. David possessed no crown, no army, and no position of visible authority. Yet before he ever sat on a throne, people reacted strongly to him. Saul, a king surrounded by soldiers and resources, became increasingly disturbed by the mere existence of a young man whose influence continued to grow. The conflict was not created by loud ambition. It was created by quiet significance. The same pattern unfolded centuries earlier in Egypt. Joseph arrived as a slave with no political power. He entered a foreign land stripped of status, separated from family, and sold into bondage. Yet everywhere he went, circumstances shifted. In Potiphar's house, prosperity followed. In prison, order emerged. In Pharaoh's court, wisdom transformed a kingdom. Joseph did not force influence upon others. Influence followed him naturally. His presence carried consequences. This pattern reveals a reality that many overlook. True power is rarely noisy. The world often associates strength with volume, visibility, and constant demonstration. History repeatedly demonstrates the opposite. The strongest rivers run deep beneath the surface. The most significant movements often begin unnoticed. The most influential figures frequently spend years hidden from public attention. Before Moses stood before Pharaoh, he spent decades in the wilderness. Before David ruled Israel, he walked alone through valleys and caves. Before Elijah confronted kings, he learned endurance in isolation. Before the apostles carried their message across continents, they spent years being prepared away from prominence. The preparation itself created a quiet strength that could not be manufactured through appearance or performance. This explains why certain people encounter unusual reactions despite living peacefully. Their presence creates contrast. Contrast has always made others uncomfortable. When someone remains calm during chaos, the chaos becomes more visible. When someone maintains integrity amid compromise, the compromise becomes easier to recognize. When someone refuses to participate in corruption, the corruption loses its ability to hide. The disturbance is not caused by the chosen individual attacking others. It is caused by their existence, revealing realities that others would prefer remain concealed. Throughout ancient Israel, prophets repeatedly experienced this phenomenon. They often lived quietly. Many possessed no military authority, yet kings feared them. Entire courts reacted to their arrival. Nations changed course because of their words. The source of that influence was not physical force. It was spiritual weight. Their presence carried conviction. Their words carried consequence. Their lives carried evidence of a different allegiance. Geography itself often highlights this process. Significant figures in biblical history were frequently separated from centers of power before being sent back into them. Moses was removed from Egypt and placed in Midian. David was taken from the fields of Bethlehem. Elijah emerged from obscure regions east of the Jordan. John the Baptist appeared from the wilderness. These locations were not random. Isolation forged stability. Distance from public recognition created clarity. Solitude developed strength that applause could never produce. By the time these individuals entered public history, their power had already been established internally. They did not need external validation because their identity had been formed elsewhere. This often confuses observers. Many assume influence comes from recognition. In reality, recognition often follows influence. The chosen individual frequently carries significance long before others acknowledge it. The effect becomes visible in conversations, relationships, workplaces, and communities. People may struggle to explain why they react strongly. Some become inspired, others become uncomfortable, some are drawn closer, others create distance. The reaction itself reveals something important. Throughout Scripture, significant individuals acted as mirrors. Their lives reflected realities hidden within surrounding people. When Joseph maintained integrity, the corruption of others became more obvious. When Daniel remained faithful in Babylon, the compromises of an empire became more visible. When Nehemiah carried conviction regarding Jerusalem's restoration, the indifference of many around him stood exposed. None of these men created conflict intentionally, yet conflict emerged because truth naturally challenges illusion. This pattern extends beyond individual stories into entire historical movements. Nations often resisted messengers before embracing their message. Communities frequently rejected voices before later recognizing their importance. Human nature tends to resist what disrupts comfort. The chosen individual often becomes a living reminder that greater possibilities exist. That reminder can inspire transformation, but it can also provoke resistance. Consider how often biblical history describes fear emerging among opponents before any direct confrontation occurred. Jericho feared Israel before the walls fell. Pharaoh feared the growth of the Hebrews before Moses appeared. Religious authorities feared the influence of those they could not control. Fear frequently emerged because influence was already present before visible action occurred. The presence itself communicated potential. This helps explain why some people encounter opposition despite maintaining humility. Their challenge to others is not rooted in hostility. It is rooted in possibility. Their existence demonstrates what commitment, discipline, conviction, and purpose can accomplish. For those unwilling to pursue growth, that demonstration becomes uncomfortable. History consistently reveals this tension. Every generation contains individuals whose quiet strength disrupts established expectations. They do not seek attention. They do not demand recognition. Yet circumstances shift around them. Opportunities emerge. Influence expands. Doors open unexpectedly. Their journey often appears mysterious to outside observers. The reality is usually much simpler. Years of unseen preparation eventually become visible results. The world notices the outcome but rarely witnesses the process. It sees David confronting Goliath but overlooks countless hours in solitude. It sees Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams but forgets years spent in prison. It sees Daniel standing before kings but ignores decades of unwavering consistency. The visible moment becomes famous. The hidden preparation remains largely unknown. This creates one of the most misunderstood aspects of spiritual influence. Quietness is often mistaken for weakness. In biblical history, quietness frequently preceded tremendous authority. Moses is described as remarkably humble, yet he confronted the most powerful ruler of his era. Daniel maintained a calm and disciplined life, yet his influence outlasted multiple empires. Esther acted with wisdom and restraint, yet her decisions altered the destiny of an entire people. Their strength did not require constant display because it was genuine. Genuine power does not need continual proof. It remains secure regardless of external recognition. Across deserts, mountains, valleys, and cities, this pattern unfolded repeatedly. The chosen were often underestimated before they were understood. Their influence was questioned before it was acknowledged. Their significance was dismissed before it became undeniable. Yet history moved in their direction because purpose ultimately carries greater momentum than appearance. The lesson remains remarkably consistent. Presence matters, character matters, conviction matters. The most powerful force in many historical moments was not military strength, wealth, or status. It was the presence of an individual whose internal foundation had been established long before the world noticed. Their calmness concealed tremendous resilience. Their silence concealed preparation. Their humility concealed authority. Their ordinary appearance concealed extraordinary purpose. As the timeline of biblical history advances from patriarchs to prophets, from kings to exiles, from wilderness journeys to restored cities, one truth becomes increasingly visible. The individuals who changed history most profoundly often carried a quiet presence. Yet beneath that quietness existed a force powerful enough to disturb systems, challenge expectations, expose hidden realities, and redirect the course of entire generations. Their power was not loud, but it was impossible to ignore for long. The historical record reveals another dimension of this pattern, one that becomes increasingly visible when tracing the movement of influential figures across time and geography. The disturbance created by a chosen individual is rarely immediate. Instead, it develops gradually, almost invisibly, until a moment arrives when those around them suddenly recognize that something significant has been unfolding for years. This delayed recognition appears repeatedly throughout Scripture. The process begins quietly. A person develops character in obscurity, integrity is formed through hardship, wisdom grows through experience, discipline is forged through adversity. None of these developments attract widespread attention, yet together they create a foundation capable of supporting extraordinary responsibility. By the time influence becomes visible, the true work has already been completed beneath the surface. The life of Joseph illustrates this progression with remarkable clarity. His journey stretched across multiple locations, each serving a specific purpose in the development of his character. The story began in Canaan, where dreams hinted at a future that seemed impossible. From there, he was transported against his will to Egypt, a civilization vastly different from the environment in which he had been raised. In Potiphar's household, he learned administration. In prison, he learned endurance. In Pharaoh's court, he learned leadership on a national scale. Each stage appeared disconnected while it was occurring. Only later did the complete pattern become visible. By the time Joseph stood before the most powerful ruler in Egypt, his quiet strength had already been refined through years of testing. The authority people witnessed in that moment was simply the visible expression of a process that had begun long before. Similar patterns emerge in the lives of other pivotal figures. Moses spent approximately 40 years within Egypt's royal environment and another 40 years in the wilderness of Midian. The geographical transition itself carried enormous significance. Egypt represented power, prestige, and human achievement. Midian represented isolation, patience, and dependence. The movement between these locations transformed him. When Moses finally returned to confront Pharaoh, he was no longer driven by youthful confidence. He carried something far more durable. His presence contained a stability that decades of solitude had produced. Pharaoh encountered a man who no longer required approval, promotion, or recognition. Such individuals become difficult to control because their identity no longer depends upon external validation. This is one reason quiet power disturbs people. Systems often function most efficiently when individuals seek acceptance above purpose. A person who possesses internal conviction cannot easily be manipulated through praise or fear. Throughout history, those who changed the course of events frequently demonstrated this characteristic. Their decisions originated from principles rather than popularity. Their direction came from purpose rather than pressure. Consequently, their presence introduced uncertainty into environments built upon predictable behavior. Babylon encountered this phenomenon through Daniel. Exiled from Jerusalem and transported hundreds of miles away, Daniel entered one of the most sophisticated empires of the ancient world. The empire possessed wealth, military strength, intellectual achievement, and political influence. Yet despite all these advantages, Daniel's presence repeatedly affected those around him. Kings sought his counsel, administrators became threatened by his consistency, rivals attempted to remove him. The reaction was not caused by aggression. Daniel remained remarkably disciplined and composed throughout his life. The disturbance originated elsewhere. His unwavering commitment exposed instability in people whose identities depended entirely upon shifting circumstances. A stable person entering an unstable environment naturally creates contrast. Contrast draws attention. Contrast reveals reality. Contrast often provokes resistance before it inspires respect. The chronology of biblical history demonstrates that influence frequently expands during seasons when visibility remains limited. David experienced this repeatedly. Before becoming king, He spent years moving through deserts, caves, forests, and isolated strongholds. Locations such as Adullam and Engedi became classrooms in which leadership developed without a throne. Those years appeared unproductive to many observers. Yet they were essential. Had David received authority before acquiring maturity, the outcome could have been very different. Instead, adversity strengthened qualities that later enabled him to govern effectively. When people eventually witnessed his influence, they often saw only the final result. They overlooked the long process that produced it. This misunderstanding persists across generations. Society often celebrates outcomes while ignoring preparation. The visible victory receives attention. The hidden years remain largely unnoticed, yet preparation determines capacity. Capacity determines impact. Impact determines legacy. Scripture repeatedly emphasizes this sequence through narrative rather than direct explanation. Locations matter because they reveal how development occurs. Wilderness regions appear frequently because they remove distractions. Deserts expose priorities. Isolation reveals character. Solitude uncovers strengths and weaknesses that crowded environments can conceal. Many of history's most significant figures passed through such environments before assuming larger responsibilities. Their power emerged from depth rather than appearance. This distinction remains important because appearance can be manufactured while depth cannot. A reputation can be created quickly. Character requires time. Influence built upon image often collapses under pressure. Influence built upon substance tends to endure. This endurance becomes visible whenever adversity arrives. During crises, superficial qualities fade, genuine qualities remain. The chosen individual often appears different precisely because their foundation was built under conditions that demanded authenticity. There was no audience to impress. There was no platform to maintain. There was only the steady process of becoming prepared for future assignments. The result is a type of strength that others sense, even when they cannot fully explain it. Consider Nehemiah's arrival in Jerusalem. The city walls lay in ruins. Discouragement dominated the landscape. Opposition emerged almost immediately, yet Nehemiah carried a confidence that did not originate from favorable circumstances. His confidence had been developed elsewhere. Before arriving in Jerusalem, he had spent years serving in the Persian court. He understood administration, planning, diplomacy, and responsibility. Those experiences became resources when rebuilding began. Once again, preparation preceded visibility. Purpose preceded recognition. Influence emerged because capacity already existed. This pattern helps explain why some individuals attract unusually strong reactions. Their presence represents potential transformation. Transformation threatens established patterns. People comfortable with stagnation often resist change. People invested in illusion often resist truth. People dependent upon instability often resist stability. Consequently, a person carrying quiet strength may encounter opposition even while behaving respectfully. The opposition is frequently connected to what they represent rather than what they have done. Biblical history provides countless examples. Jeremiah faced resistance because his message challenged denial. Elijah faced resistance because his convictions challenged compromise. John the Baptist faced resistance because his presence challenged complacency. In each case, the disturbance originated from contrast. Light reveals darkness not by attacking it, but simply by existing. Stability reveals instability through comparison. Integrity reveals corruption through proximity. This reality extends beyond individuals into entire historical movements. Israel's journey from Egypt to the Promised Land illustrates how collective identity develops through prolonged preparation. The route itself mattered. The wilderness was not merely a geographical region, it was a formative environment. The journey transformed former slaves into a nation capable of carrying responsibility. Progress unfolded through stages, locations, challenges, and lessons. Each movement prepared the people for the next. The same principle appears repeatedly throughout history. Significant transitions require preparation. Lasting influence requires development. Enduring authority requires maturity. The chosen individual often understands this only after looking backward. During preparation, the process can appear confusing. The isolation feels unnecessary. The delays seem frustrating. The obstacles appear excessive. Yet viewed through the lens of history, a different picture emerges. Every challenge contributed something essential. Every setback developed resilience. Every disappointment created perspective. Every season of obscurity strengthened foundations that later supported greater responsibility. This is why quiet strength possesses unusual power. It is rarely the product of comfort. More often, it is the result of endurance. It emerges from surviving experiences that could have produced bitterness, but instead produced wisdom. It develops through carrying burdens without allowing those burdens to define identity. It grows through remaining committed when recognition remains absent. Such strength cannot be borrowed. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be imitated convincingly. It must be developed. Those who encounter it often sense its authenticity immediately. They may not understand its origin, but they recognize its presence. Some feel inspired by it. Others feel threatened by it. Both reactions reveal the same truth. Genuine influence affects people long before words are spoken. Throughout biblical chronology, from the patriarchs wandering ancient trade routes to the prophets standing before kings, from exiles navigating foreign empires to leaders rebuilding ruined cities, the same principle remains visible. Quiet presence does not indicate limited power. In many cases, it indicates power that has been refined, disciplined, and brought under control. Such power does not seek attention because it does not require validation. It does not compete for recognition because its value is already established. It simply continues moving forward, shaping events, influencing lives, and altering outcomes in ways that become fully visible only with the passage of time. The final stage of this historical pattern emerges when preparation, purpose, and timing converge. This is the moment when years of hidden development suddenly become visible to the surrounding world. Yet even at this stage, the chosen individual often appears remarkably unchanged on the surface. The same calm demeanor remains. The same measured speech continues. The same disciplined habits persist. What changes is not the person, but the visibility of their influence. History repeatedly demonstrates that significant impact often arrives without dramatic announcement. Instead, a gradual accumulation of preparation reaches a point where its effects can no longer remain concealed. The biblical narrative provides numerous examples of this transition. Consider the moment when David finally assumed the throne after years of uncertainty. The coronation itself was important, but the true transformation had occurred long before. Leadership had been forged in wilderness strongholds. Strategic thinking had been developed while evading enemies. Compassion had been strengthened through hardship. Restraint had been demonstrated when opportunities for revenge presented themselves. By the time public authority arrived, internal authority already existed. The kingdom simply recognized what years of preparation had produced. This distinction is crucial because it reveals why quiet power often proves more enduring than visible power. Visible power can be granted suddenly and removed just as quickly. Internal authority develops slowly and tends to endure. Throughout history, societies have repeatedly confused position with influence, yet Scripture consistently separates the two. Many individuals held positions without possessing genuine influence. Others carried enormous influence long before receiving formal recognition. Joseph influenced Egypt before receiving authority over Egypt. Daniel influenced Babylon before receiving promotion within Babylon. Esther influenced an empire before anyone understood the extent of her significance. Their presence carried weight before their titles reflected it. This recurring pattern demonstrates that true influence originates internally before manifesting externally. Geography again reinforces this principle. Many pivotal events occurred at locations that seemed insignificant when viewed through conventional standards. Bethlehem was not the most powerful city in the region. Nazareth lacked prestige. The wilderness regions surrounding the Jordan River appeared remote compared to major population centers. Yet history repeatedly shifted through people emerging from such places. The lesson becomes increasingly clear. Great movements do not always begin in places of prominence. Often they begin in places of preparation. The same reality applies to individuals. Their greatest strength frequently develops away from public observation. By the time others recognize it, years of unseen work have already taken place. This explains why some people create unusually strong reactions without seeking attention. Their presence communicates substance. Substance creates contrast. Contrast creates awareness. Awareness forces decisions. Throughout biblical history, people encountering significant individuals rarely remained neutral. Some aligned themselves with the purpose they represented. Others resisted it. Very few remained unaffected. The reaction itself revealed the influence already at work. Consider the rebuilding of Jerusalem after exile. The city stood as a visible symbol of restoration, yet the reconstruction process encountered persistent opposition. Critics mocked the effort. Adversaries attempted disruption. Resistance appeared at multiple stages. Why? Because rebuilding represented more than construction. It represented change. Change threatens those invested in maintaining existing conditions. The same dynamic often surrounds individuals carrying purpose. Their growth symbolizes possibility. Their progress demonstrates what commitment can accomplish. Their resilience exposes excuses. Consequently, their presence can disturb people who have become comfortable with limitation. This disturbance should not be misunderstood as hostility. In many cases, it is simply the natural consequence of contrast. Throughout Scripture, moments of transition frequently occurred after extended periods of apparent inactivity. Abraham waited decades before promises began to unfold visibly. Joseph spent years in confinement before entering leadership. Moses remained hidden in Midian before returning to Egypt. David wandered through wilderness regions before ascending to the throne. These timelines reveal an important principle. The chosen are often developed privately before being revealed publicly. The delay is not evidence of absence. It is evidence of preparation. The silence is not evidence of insignificance. It is evidence that foundations are still being formed. This understanding changes how history is interpreted. Many people focus exclusively on visible achievements. Biblical chronology encourages examination of the periods preceding those achievements. The hidden years matter because they determine the quality of everything that follows. A structure rises only as high as its foundation allows. Influence expands only as far as character can support it. Responsibility increases only when capacity exists to manage it. The chosen individual often experiences seasons that appear disconnected from future purpose. Looking backward, however, the connections become unmistakable. Every location contributed something. Every challenge added strength. Every disappointment developed perspective. Every delay refined priorities. Nothing was wasted. The cumulative effect created a person capable of carrying influence without being consumed by it. This is one of the defining characteristics of quiet power. It remains stable when recognition arrives because its identity was established before recognition appeared. History offers countless examples of the opposite scenario. Individuals who receive influence before developing maturity often struggle to sustain it. Recognition becomes their foundation rather than their assignment. When circumstances change, instability follows. The biblical pattern consistently points in a different direction. Development precedes elevation. Character precedes responsibility. Preparation precedes visibility. This sequence protects both the individual and the purpose they carry. As a result, when the moment of transition arrives, the chosen person often appears surprisingly calm. Others may view the opportunity as extraordinary. They view it as the next step in a process already years in progress. The outside world sees sudden success. They see the continuation of a journey. This perspective explains why quiet strength possesses unusual endurance. It is not dependent upon circumstances. It was formed through circumstances. Storms do not create panic because previous storms created resilience. Opposition does not create confusion because previous opposition created clarity. Delays do not create despair because previous delays developed patience. The power others notice is frequently the cumulative result of experiences they never witnessed. This reality becomes increasingly evident when examining the broader sweep of biblical history. From the migration of Abraham through the deserts of the Near East, to the formation of Israel in the wilderness, to the rise and fall of kingdoms, to the exile and restoration of a nation, the narrative repeatedly highlights individuals whose influence exceeded outward appearance. They were not always the strongest, wealthiest, or most connected people in their environments, yet they carried something more significant. They carried purpose shaped by preparation. That purpose altered families, cities, nations, and generations. The same pattern appears whenever history moves forward, through individuals willing to endure hidden seasons before visible ones. Their quietness is often misunderstood. Their patience is mistaken for passivity. Their humility is mistaken for weakness. Yet over time, the results reveal the truth. The calm exterior concealed determination. The silence concealed development. The ordinary appearance concealed extraordinary potential. Eventually, the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Influence expands. Opportunities emerge. Impact multiplies. The very qualities once overlooked become the reasons others pay attention. By then, however, the chosen individual is no longer seeking validation. Years of preparation have already settled that question. Their focus remains fixed on purpose rather than recognition. This is why their presence continues to disturb some people. Not because they demand attention, but because they demonstrate what becomes possible when identity is rooted in purpose instead of approval. Their existence challenges limitations. Their consistency challenges compromise. Their resilience challenges excuses. Their calmness challenges chaos. And throughout the long timeline of biblical history, from ancient deserts to restored cities, from shepherd fields to royal courts, from exile to renewal, the same conclusion emerges with remarkable consistency. The individuals who left the deepest mark upon history often carried a quiet presence. Yet beneath that quietness existed a strength capable of shifting destinies, influencing generations, and transforming the course of events. Their power did not need to announce itself. Time revealed it. History confirmed it. And the impact continued long after their footsteps disappeared from the roads they once traveled.